Hi everyone, what you're about to see in a few seconds is a whiteboard presentation which will explain how organizations use and exploit employees. I have broken the topic down into four major sections, these being a brief history, the exploitation of labor, the exploitation of worker health and safety, and the exploitation of human needs and rights, followed by a metaphor which will help tie these concepts together. I will be defining these concepts throughout the video using references to some video clips as well as my own imagined scenario which will help to illustrate the topic. Further information will be provided at the end of the video, including all relevant definitions and diagrams, sample exam questions, as well as all of the links to the video clips which were presented. I have also provided details in the description box below which should be able to help you navigate your way through this video. Please enjoy. This is Bob. Bob has worked at this car manufacturing plant as an assembly line worker since his 20s. Bob is now 50 years old. He has given 30 years of service to his company and feels as though he has many good years ahead of him. One day, Bob encounters an accident while on the job, which causes him to be absent from work for a few weeks. Upon his arrival back to work, Bob is told that he is no longer needed. Due to his injury, he will not be able to keep up with the demands, and so he will be replaced by Ted, the young new apprentice. In this scenario, we might say that Bob was exploited by his company. But what does it mean to be exploited, and what are the different ways in which employees can be exploited? This is precisely what this video will explain. How organizations use and exploit employees. To begin, if we look at the word exploit, it has two widely accepted uses. We consider the word in the form of a noun or in the form of a verb. The noun describes a striking or notable deed, a kind of spirited or heroic act. Whereas the verb has a much more negative connotation. It is to utilize, especially for profit, to use and derive benefit from, but selfishly for one's own purpose. So there is a disconnect in which we are forced to see the word exploit from both ends of the spectrum, in which the exploit is a beneficial act for the organization, but a kind of act which is selfish in nature, in which the organization thrives at the cost of the individual. As Karl Marx describes it, the organization is like a vampire which sucks living labor. Organizations take and use what they need from individuals when it is convenient for them, often at the cost of worker health and safety, as well as their personal needs and rights as human beings. Perhaps organizations have forgotten that employees are in fact humans, not animals, and certainly not pieces of fruit which can be eaten and thrown away, as Willy Loman famously puts it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Arthur Miller's famous play, Willy Loman is a man who has dedicated 34 years of his life as a salesman for the Wagner Company. Now into his 60s, Willy is struggling to make ends meet but feels that he has good years ahead of him. Here is a clip which depicts Willy pleading with his boss for his job.
When I met a salesman in the Parker House, his name was Dave Singerman. He was 84 years old, and he drummed merchandise in 31 states. An old Davey go up to his room, you understand, put on his green velvet slippers, I'll never forget. Pick up the phone, call the buys. Without ever leaving his room, at the age of 84, he made his living. And when I saw that, I realized that selling was the greatest career that a man could want, because what could be more satisfying than to be able to go at the age of 84 into 20 or 30 different cities and pick up a phone and be remembered and loved and helped by so many different people. You know, when he died, by the way, he died the death of a salesman in his green velvet slippers in the smoker of the New York, New Haven, and Hartford going into Boston. When he died, hundreds of salesmen and buyers were at his funeral. Things were sad on a lot of trains for months after that. You see, in those days, there was personality in it, Howard. There was respect and comradeship and gratitude in it. Today, it's all cut and dried, and there's no chance for bringing friendship to bear or personality. I mean, you see what I mean. They don't know me anymore.
That's just the thing, Willie.
If I had $40 a week, that's all I need.
Kid,
$40.
Kid, I can't take blood from a stone,
Howard, the
Willie.
year Al Smith was nominated, your father came to me. I'm talking about your father. There were promises made across this desk. You mustn't tell me that you got people to see. I put 34 years into this firm, Howard, and now I can't pay my insurance. You can't eat the orange and throw the peel away. A man is not a piece of fruit.
Willie, though a fictitious character, is an accurate representation of an employee who has been used and exploited. The Wagner Company having provided Willie with a job year after year as it was serving them, but as soon as Willie Loman cannot perform to their standards, he is no longer needed. So what are we talking about when we say an individual has been exploited? Typically, we will consider the exploitation from three facets: the exploitation of labor, the exploitation of workers' health and safety, and the exploitation of human needs and rights. To understand these three facets, we must first take a look at where this all began. Surely exploitation of people and of workers can go back thousands of years to the first hierarchical societies in which we might find classes of people, from rulers to servicemen such as priests, merchants, and scribes, to the peasants. We might also look to the 18th and 19th centuries and the presence of slave labor during these times. However, if we want to talk about exploitation of workers in modern organizations, we can trace its roots back to the Industrial Revolution. During this time, the mechanistic approaches to production became increasingly popular and favored over the cottage or domestic system of production. This domestic system was seen to be inferior in terms of how certain one could be of its output and the quality of those outputs. This shift greatly transformed the workforce, in which those who were previously self-employed became factory workers, joining the new wage-earning class. With the introduction of wages, labor became something that could be bought and sold like a commodity, and people depended on these wages for their livelihood. Not only did this new system make workers dependent on the company, but also companies became dependent on workers to provide them with efficiency by use of their labor time so that they could make a profit, every second of wasted time representing a loss of profit for the company. This called for increased control over the production process in order to ensure maximum levels of productivity, which created a divide in the workplace between managers and workers. Work at the lowest level of the hierarchy becoming increasingly simplified. Here is where we encounter the first facet, the exploitation of labor. Within this organizational hierarchy, two groups of workers evolved. These are the primary and secondary sectors or labor markets, known today as the white-collar and blue-collar workers. Due to the processes of de-skilling and homogenization of work, which meant making tasks simplified and uniform, workers who were once deemed skilled and those who were deemed semi-skilled were being replaced by cheaper, unskilled workers. These workers became known as the secondary labor market, or the blue-collar workers. Their jobs largely entailed physical labor, such that you could find in a factory or workshop at the lower levels of the organizational hierarchy. The primary labor market, or the white-collar workers, are those whose jobs are non-manual and knowledge-intensive, such that you might find in an office. These are often called career-type jobs and are crucial to the company as they call for a high degree of skill. The primary sector of workers is often considered to be human capital, whereas the secondary sector of workers is only a buffer or another warm body to put on the job, but easily dispensable and easily replaced. These jobs often being left as a last resort to those who can't get any other. As a result, desperate individuals are taken advantage of, as they know that if they do not perform to a certain level, they will lose their jobs and likely their livelihood. So we can see how the de-skilling and homogenization of work can lead to cheaper labor, which leads to more unskilled workers, which leads to workers who are more easily dispensable or replaced, which combined make up facet number 1. The second facet, or the exploitation of worker health and safety, identifies the actual working conditions in which employees are forced to work, leading to physical injuries and sometimes death. But we will also consider work-related stress and the implications of the stress for workers. Perhaps the most prominent example that comes to mind when we consider hazardous working conditions are sweatshops and factories in third world countries and the use of child labor. The Free the Children webpage tells us that there are 218 million child laborers around the world. That is 1 in 7 children who must work long hours on a full-time basis, have little to no access to education, and are frequent recipients to abuse at the hands of an employer. Every year, 22,000 children are said to die from work-related accidents. But many don't realize that even in Western society, in some organizations, workers are themselves facing life-threatening hazards at work. A relatively modern example of a company who has exposed employees to this kind of treatment is the McWane Corporation, subject of a PBS documentary in 2003. The website for the full documentary is listed below. For now, here is a short clip to illustrate our point.
Since 1995, this company has been cited for more than 100 environmental violations.
This is the source of the spill.
And more than 400 safety violations.
They didn't care about my daddy. They killed him.
If a guy got killed, well, that's bad. But now get him out of the way. We've got to make production.
Why hasn't this company been stopped? Frontline and the New York Times investigate a dangerous business.
I work all my life. I put all my time, my energy. I put I'm a dedicated worker, never been late and everything, and I feel destroyed.
Marcos Lopez worked here at Tyler Pipe in Tyler, Texas, McWane's largest plant. Since they bought this plant 7 years ago, federal officials say it stands out as a repeat violator of safety rules. The workforce that has endured burns, amputations, and violent industrial accidents.
The workload forces you, to care less about safety and just do your work. And you got this point, you reach this point that you just don't care about you, and you set your mind on work, and that's what they want, and that's how people get hurt.
Many McWane workers say safety is sacrificed to increased productivity. Since the 1970s, the McWane way of management has spread as the company aggressively expanded. It has estimated annual revenues approaching $2 billion. Buying up antiquated plants, they now have foundries across North America, increasing profitability through what they call disciplined management practices. Here in Tyler, Texas, disciplined management practices meant reducing the workforce by nearly 2/3 of the people working there.
There were a lot of changes, and it changed for the worse for every employee.
I'm embarrassed for people to even know that I have been employed by those people.
Ron Howell worked at Tyler Pipe for 42 years as a design engineer. Now retired, He blames McWane for increasing profits at enormous human cost.
A human being can only hit so many buttons on the machine. If he's operating a machine, they put another machine behind him. Now he's got to operate 2 machines. Well, they got room to put another machine over here, and now he's got to work 3 machines.
Sometimes I work 16 hours up there a
16
day.
hours?
16 hours. And I will find my supervisor and ask him, and I go. He said, no, you will leave when I tell you to.
He was a supervisor, as I understand it.
Jerry Hobson died a long, slow death after an accident that happened at Tyler Pipe 7 months before Ira Kofer's. As Hobson was taking a familiar shortcut across an unguarded machine, the machine started up and crushed him. Bobby Hobson used to work at Tyler. He remembers his brother in grief and anger.
Because me and him were real close. Fact is, I never remember having a cross word with him. And you know, brothers don't do that.
Why didn't they wait, though, for him to get all the way through and clear before starting that machine back up?
Production. The company should have had a shield up there or some kind of guard where those guys could not walk across that cylinder.
Was it any kind of secret to supervisors, to management, that guys were taking that shortcut?
Supervisors go across there too.
So the company knew there was a hazard, knew that men were walking through this hazard, but took no steps whatsoever to prevent that from happening?
Right. Exactly right.
At the time, the company denied responsibility for Mr. Hobson's accident. A company official told the local Tyler paper he was a good man who made a very big mistake. But on the shop floor, workers and managers told us there was a gap between policy and practice.
They preached it. They're telling you be safe, but you get down there and do it. But sir, I've got to have 2 or 3 guys with me. Well, you better round them up and be down there in 30 seconds. And I want that thing fixed and running. And if it's not making production, and we're going to see the numbers the next week, and it's going to be your fault if it didn't make those numbers.
As productivity increased, so did the accidents. There were 4 more amputations following Ira Kofer's. 60% of the maintenance workers in one plant were injured, and OSHA inspectors would find 30 more safety violations involving unguarded machinery in 1999. Tyler Pipe and McWane continued to violate OSHA rules and put workers at risk. In just a few years, the new management philosophy had turned Tyler Pipe into an employer of last resort, and the company tried to cope with heavy turnover in the workforce by recruiting ex-convicts from local prisons.
The word had got out about Tyler Pipe, what the management philosophy was, how the employees were treated. You couldn't find a local in East Texas that really wanted that job, and if they took it, they'd be gone in a month.
What was that management attitude? What was that mindset?
Didn't matter. Just put another warm body in there.
Roland Hoskin was desperate for work. His daughter and twin brother say he had nowhere else to turn. He was divorced and in debt. But in May 2000, he took a maintenance job on the graveyard shift at Tyler Pipe. And he was afraid.
He was always, saying how dangerous it was out there. That's all. He didn't, really the training wasn't adequate. He didn't believe, nobody showed nobody how to do nothing. They just, you're on your own.
Working alone at 4 in the morning with little experience, he entered a sand pit to adjust a moving, unguarded conveyor belt. A dangerous and illegal, but routine practice. The machine grabbed his arm. The graphic photographs by investigators show Roland Hoskin never had a chance. After the accident, the company argued that it was his own fault.
My dad isn't the kind of person, he wasn't stupid. He wasn't stupid, but he didn't want to lose his job. And he felt like if he didn't do whatever he needed to do, that he would lose his job. and he was just trying to make it, trying to get back on his feet and make it.
We all miss him, you know, just went to work and didn't come back.
Roland Hoskin was one of 9 workers killed in McWane plants since 1995. And the only one whose death would result in McWane being held criminally responsible under federal law. The company was charged with a maximum penalty, a misdemeanor, and then paid a fine of $250,000. No one was sent to jail.
The company's attitude towards the injured workers was that none of the injuries were legitimate, is how it ended up being, that everything was suspect, and they felt that Tyler Pipe was giving everyone a free ride.
I say, sir, I ain't got nothing against x-rays. Can you please take an x-ray? So he did.
The x-ray revealed that his back was broken.
As soon as they discovered this in the x-ray, did they hospitalize Mr. Lopez?
They did not hospitalize Mr. Lopez. They did not refer him to a surgeon. And in fact, they did not tell Mr. Lopez himself that he had a compression fracture of the spine. Well, I said, why do you not tell this gentleman that he's got a compression fracture of the spine? And he said to me, well, then he'd know how hurt he was. They didn't even have him in a back brace.
They let a man walk around with a broken back?
Yes, they did.
It was a full 25 days after his accident before he finally had surgery that attempted to repair his damaged back with screws and a plate. None of the managers at Tyler Pipe would speak to us about the deaths or injuries there, referring us instead to the McWane corporate headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama. In a new millennium, the McWane foundries thrive, still faithful to his austere philosophy, now called disciplined management practices. They have an enviable record of commercial success and an unenviable reputation as one of the most dangerous workplaces in America.
As this video briefly touched on, McWane is a corporation which became notorious for its treatment of workers with hundreds of recorded criminal offenses. Workers at McWane plants were often forced to work around unguarded safety equipment and were often made to fix machinery without having properly shut it down. An incredibly dangerous practice, but necessary if individuals wanted to keep their jobs. This is a prime example of how the push for productivity decreases the importance to ensure worker safety. Marcus Lopez from the clip can be compared to Marco Vello of Daniel Berman's Death on the Job, in which reports of their medical conditions were withheld from them so that they may continue serving the company despite the fact that it was detrimental to their health. To relate this to our definition of to exploit, we can see that the organization is using the employee to derive a benefit from them, the profit. However, it is selfish, failing to take into account the implications of their actions on the worker. Further implications which are overlooked are the impacts of work-related stress, which is a concern for both the primary and secondary labor markets. White-collar workers especially typically fall into the trap of workaholism and type A behavior pattern, which is when one becomes so driven to have control over their work that they become increasingly susceptible to experience stressors. These stressors may cause negative physical, psychological, and behavioral strains such as coronary disease, ulcers, and mental breakdown. Many organizations often thrive from stress. Some stress is actually good stress. This is called eustress, and it is often linked to increased performance as it pushes individuals to work harder. However, some stress, when undue and unnecessary, can lead to the negative physical, psychological, and behavioral strains as spoken of before. But many organizations may not even be aware that they are causing this kind of stress. For example, the TV show Undercover Boss depicts CEOs going undercover in their own organizations to see for themselves how efficiently their operations are. In many of these episodes, these employers will discover that work on the front line is not as easy as they thought.
You ready to get to work?
Yes, sir.
921 pounds of dough at a time. You go through over 50,000 pounds of flour a day. Wow! This is the bag shape. These controls up here control all of this over on this side.
Okay.
Got to watch the buns come down the line, pull your bag up. You want to guide them in the box. So make sure you don't get your hand in the box.
Gotcha.
And don't get your hand under that hoe, because it'll come down and it'll take the skin right off the arm. Want to try it? Yeah.
Ready?
Drag your toe. Up. Turn the bag change on. Pull these buns out. Move the garbage.
Ah, these are all messed up. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Ah, did it again. What am I doing wrong?
Well, actually, your bag came off early.
Okay, got it. That was very frustrating. I don't like messing things up.
There you go. Go, 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 go.
Why is that catching that top? I don't like creating havoc, which is what I felt like I was doing. There was product getting destroyed. Steve looked like he was getting a little frustrated with me as well.
I got it. I got it.
All right, got it. Let me get out of the way. What am I doing wrong?
And then he kept asking me, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Well, a lot.
Ah.
Cut it off. Hold them out. Hold it back.
Ah, what happened? All right, at least I finished on a high note. It surprised me how angry I got at myself that I could not master the packing machine. I destroyed 4,800 buns.
You probably smashed 20 to 25 cases. But the good thing about that is all of our waste comes back here in barrels, and a hog farmer comes and picks it up, and he feeds it to his hogs. You fed the pigs really well this week.
I guess if there's one thing I can learn from this is that, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. I just don't accept it well in myself. And I always tried to make sure that I was doing things just one step above to make sure that I never disappointed my family. I want my family to be proud of me, and I want everybody to be proud of this company.
Yep, this is our essential components. It's what the smell is. And then,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
This
Try not
is
to
really
spill too
heavy.
much. Oh yeah, good job. These are a lot lighter. There's only 9 kilos in here.
Still heavy to me. Wow, look at it. It looks like bubble gum.
And it's gonna be about as fun as pulling bubble gum out of a giant bowl. You're just gonna dig in like as much as you can.
Oh my gosh, this is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm out of breath.
Lifting that gooey substance out of that bowl was incredibly difficult.
You literally have to be in good physical shape to be able to do this job.
Sure will get you that way.
My heart's pounding.
Yep.
I was hot, was sweating, and it was a lot heavier than I would have ever expected.
Wow, I am smoking hot right
now. Are you making hot milk? So they make the essential components in the UK and then they send them over. So we have to order like 8 weeks ahead, and sometimes we don't have our essential components. So you can't make the product, basically. Like, you can have everything you need, but if you don't have that, you have nothing. That can be extremely frustrating.
We do try to ship our essential components via ocean containers so that we're not air freighting. And we do that for environmental reasons. We want to reduce the company's impact on the environment.
So it's worth looking at how we can better forecast so that our production teams are better supplied to produce the products.
You're also weighing right into the EC, so it's a little more high stakes. You have to be super careful to not overpour. The EC is what's expensive. A couple of grams of the EC was like $200. No pressure, just holding a bucket of gold. Oh wait, you wanted $750.
Oh. And this is the one with the EC in it?
Yeah, we're just gonna have a little extra in there this time.
Exactly the thing you told me not to mess up. I just messed up. I made a big boo-boo. I'm not moving fast enough.
No, you're not. Go faster. She needs to pick it up more. Probably a lot. We're growing like crazy, which is really nice. We open stores so frequently that I can't keep track of them.
Have you noticed a significant sort of increase in your workload because of that?
Oh, yeah.
Is it still manageable, or?
Yeah, with the right people, it's possible anytime. There's pressure every day to make everything always. You just sort of breathe deep and keep going.
She is exactly what we look for in a Lush employee. Does that noise ever get to you?
All day, no. That is one of the biggest perks about being deaf in your left ear. It's like, I don't even know.
Oh, you're deaf in your left ear. I hadn't noticed that you were having any difficulty hearing me.
I've been working with her for a few hours now. I didn't notice anything along the way.
That's probably when I was around 8. I had a cyst in my ear that crushed my bones of hearing on my left side. And nobody noticed until I was 13. They just thought I was slow. It sucked in high school, but that's just because like anytime you're different in high school sucks. And a hearing aid would be nice. I had a hearing aid when I was in high school. It broke years ago and I haven't been able to replace it because a new hearing aid is like 10 grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's terrible seeing how hard she works every day and that she still, can't get her hands on this one thing that could change her life.
Remember how I was saying that things change a lot? Well, originally we had planned that we were going to be doing a sugar scrub. However, don't have the raw materials. So we're gonna do a yuzu cocoa bubble rune instead.
All right, so we're just rolling with it.
I kind of gotta.
They've had to juggle their entire schedule, so I really want to look again at where are we dropping the ball and getting the raw ingredients to our production staff.
Because we're nearing 3 o'clock, I am going to rush us through this as fast as possible.
Okay.
Because we are all done at 3, and I'm a little concerned that we won't have it done in time. We have to go top speed right now.
Oh gosh, I gotta move faster.
Yeah, you gotta hurry up.
I have known how to work out like this ever. Okay. Every muscle in my arms is hurting right now. But I can't stop because production staff finish at 3, and this product cannot sit overnight like this. I did. So the objective here is to be fast.
You don't even know the half of it. Plus, I'm seeing a lot of finger marks.
I know. These ones are getting redone. Ah! Oh. Ah! Oh my gosh. So everyone in here right now is working on these same things.
Yeah, everyone's pretty much hustling as fast as they can to get this done.
Is this overtime because I was so slow?
All on you.
I feel like it is.
We didn't want to do overtime today. I'm not going to specifically point any fingers, but maybe people weren't scooping their bubble runes fast enough or just, hanging out near the fun and not working hard enough. Not gonna say who.
I feel terrible that we're all having to move so quickly right now to make up for a bit of my slowness earlier in the day. I have been talking about the handmade aspect of this brand for 10 years, and not until today did I actually understand how physically difficult the handmade.
Though we can see that perhaps the organization's intent was not to create stress for its workers, its underlying push for productivity is what drives some individuals to the life of a workaholic. Employees realize that if they make a mistake, they will have to work twice as hard. So we can see how the ongoing push for productivity can lead to neglect of safety requirements and how neglect of safety leads to work-related injuries and deaths. And we can also see how this push for productivity can also lead to increased stress, which can result in negative physical, psychological, and behavioral consequences. These combined form the second facet, exploitation of worker health and safety. Facet number 3, the exploitation of workers' needs and rights, refers to the fact that employees do not have much choice. There are little measures in place to ensure worker health and safety. The PBS documentary on McWane points out that penalties for organizations regarding safety violations, including death, are so low that it is easier for an organization to pay them off than to take the necessary measures to prevent further accidents. Furthermore, no McWane employees were sent to jail, despite the fact that the company was found guilty of countless criminal charges. We might say that the organization is like a balloon pump, with the balloon representing the employee. The balloon is dependent on the organization, or the pump, to give it air, as is the organization dependent on the balloon to make its efforts visible, the productivity of the company being represented by the largeness of the balloon. However, as the organization continues to pump air into the balloon, the employee is under pressure, being stretched to its maximum capacity until it finally pops. Furthermore, once the balloon is broken, it receives no compensation and is replaced.